Desiderio, a wedding gift from Troilo Baglioni of Fratta. An allusion, doubtless, ferox atque cruenta facitia, by fierce and cruel joke, to the triumph of love, according to Messer Francesco Petrarca, painted upon the front of the coffer. The lid being raised, they came to a piece of red cloth, such as is used for mules, etiam even so a fold of common linen, and below it a coverlet of green silk, which, being raised, their eyes were met. Heu infandum patri scleratumque donos, O unspeakable father of a wicked gift, by the body of Mona Maddalena, naked as God had made it, dead, with 2 stabs in the neck, the long golden hair tied with pearls, but dabbed in blood, the which Maddalena was cruelly squeezed into that coffer, having on her breast the body of an infant recently born, dead like herself. When he beheld this sight, Ser Piero threw himself on the floor and wept, and uttered dreadful blasphemies. But Desiderio of Castiglione del Lago said nothing, but called a brother of Ser Piero, a priest and prior of Saint Severus, and with his assistance carried the coffer into the garden. This garden, within the walls of the city, on the side of Porta Eburnia, was pleasantly situated, and abounding with flowers and trees, useful both for their fruit and their shade, and rich likewise in all such herbs as thyme, majoram, fennel, and many others that prudent housewives desire for their kitchen, all watered by stone canals, ingeniously constructed by Ser Piero, which were fed from a fountain where you might see a mermaid squeezing the water from her breasts, a subtle device of the same Piero, and executed in a way such as would have done honour to Phidias or Praxiteles, on hard stone from Montecatria. In this place Desiderio of Castiglione del Lago dug a deep grave under an almond tree, the which grave he carefully lined with stones and slabs of marble, which he tore up from the pavement in order to diminish the damp, and then requested the priest, Ser Piero's brother, who had helped him in the work, to fetch his sacred vestments and hooks and all necessary for consecrating that ground. This the priest immediately did, being a holy man and sore grieved for the case of his niece. Meanwhile, with the help of Ser Piero, Desiderio tenderly lifted the body of Mona Maddalena out of the wedding chest, washed it in odorous waters, and dressed it in fine linen and bridal garments, not without much weeping over the poor damsel's sad plight, and curses upon the cruelty of her ravisher, and having embraced her tenderly, they laid her once more in the box, painted with the triumph of love, upon folds of fine damask and brocade, her hands folded, and her head decently placed upon a pillow of silver cloth, a wreath of roses, which Desiderio himself plaited, on her hair, so that she looked like a holy saint, or the damsel Julia, daughter of the Emperor Augustus Caesar, who was discovered buried on the Appian Way, and incontinently fell into dust. A marvellous thing. They filled the chest with as many flowers as they could find, also sweet-scented herbs, bay leaves, orris powder, frankincense, ambergris, and a certain gum called in Syrian physalis, and by the Jews barach, in which they say that the body of King David was kept intact from earthly corruption, and which the priest, the brother of Ser Piero, who was learned in all alchemy and astrology, had bought of certain Moors. Then, with many alasses and tears, they covered the damsel's face with an embroidered veil and a fold of brocade, and, closing the chest, buried it in the hole, among great store of hay and straw and sand, and closed it up, and smoothed the earth, and to mark the place Desiderio planted a tuft of fennel under the almond tree. But not before having embraced the damsel many times, and taken a handful of earth from her grave, and eaten it, with many imprecations upon Messer Troilo, which it were terrible to relate. Then the priest, the brother of Ser Piero, said the service for the dead, Desiderio serving him as acolyte, and they all went their way, grieving sorely. But the body of the child, the which had been found in the wedding chest, they threw down a place near Saint Herculanus, where the refuse and offal of dead animals are thrown, called the Sardegna, because it was the bastard of Ser Troilo, et infami scelerisque partum, and the child of wicked infamy. Then, as this matter got abroad, and also Desiderio's imprecations against Ser Troilo, Ser Piero, who was an old man and prudent, caused him to depart privily from Perugia, for fear of the wrath of the magnificent Orazio Baglione, uncle of Messer Troilo, and lord of the town. Desiderio of Castiglione del Lago went to Rome, where he did wonderful things and beautiful, among others certain frescoes in Saints Cosmas and Damian for the Cardinal of Ostia, and to Naples, where he entered the service of the Duke of Calabria, and followed his armies long, building fortresses, and making machines and models for cannon, and other ingenious and useful things. And thus for 7 years, until he heard that Ser Piero was dead at Perugia of a surfeit of eels, and that Messer Troilo was in the city, raising a company of horse with his cousin Astore Baglione for the Duke of Urbino. And this was before the plague, and the terrible coming to Umbria of the Spaniards and renegade Moors, under Caesar Borgia, Vicarius Sanctae Ecclesia, sue flagellum Dei et Novus Attila, the vicar of the Holy Church, or the whip of God, and the new Attila the Hun. So Desiderio came back privily to Perugia, and put up his mule at a small inn, having dyed his hair black and grown his beard after the manner of Easterns, saying he was Greek, coming from Ancona. And he went to the priest, prior of Saint Severus, and the brother of Ser Piero, and discovered himself to him, who, although old, had great joy in seeing him, and hearing of his intent. And Desiderio confessed all his sins to the priest, and obtained absolution, and received the body of Christ with great fervour and compunction. And the priest placed his sword on the altar, beside the gospel, as he said mass, and blessed it. And Desiderio knelt and made a vow never to touch food save the body of Christ, till he could taste the blood of Messer Troilo. And for 3 days and 3 nights he watched him and dogged him, but Messer Troilo rarely went unaccompanied by his men, because he had offended so many honourable citizens by his amorous fury, and he knew that his kinsmen dreaded him, and would gladly be rid of him, on account of his ferocity and ambition, and their desire to unite the fief of Fratta to the other lands of the main line of the magnificent house of Baglione, famous in arms. But one day toward dusk, Desiderio saw Messer Troilus